welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book haul. Now, in the beginning of the year, when we first started being quarantined, I bought so many books. I was like, if we're gonna stay inside, I'm gonna buy all the books and I'm gonna read all the books, and I bought way too many books. And I took a break from all that book buying so that I could read some of the books, which was somewhat successful. Not as successful as I thought it would be, but not too bad either. And then slowly over time, I've been accumulating other books that I really wanted instead of just buying and going crazy. So this is going to be a book haul for all of those books that I've accumulated over the last few months. And it's a mix of both fiction and nonfiction type of books. So it's not going to be just fantasy, but other books that I've been curious about and maybe you guys will be curious about too. So the first one is fantasy, and that is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the All-Crate version with the beautiful gold sprayed edges and the dark cover. It also comes, I think, with a little bookmark. I have been anticipating this book, I think, most of the year. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I'm really excited to read it. I don't know when I'm gonna get to it, but I loved how beautiful it was, and I feel like I will like it because it's dark academia, and I tend to really like books like that, so I'm excited. I know a little bit about this book, not a lot. I know that it has to do with a school, a really dangerous school where you could get killed at any second. So students have to be hyper vigilant even when they're in the shower, even when they're eating, not to do so alone, otherwise we'll get killed by a monster. And that is basically the learning experience. I don't know that much more about it, but again, I do like to go into books without knowing a ton, so I'm okay with that, and I've heard good things, so I'm excited about this one. The next book is adult fiction, and so it's not a YA novel, but it's still a really popular one here on YouTube, and the cover is to die for. That is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. You probably already heard about this one. It's been everywhere, including on some bestseller lists, I do believe. This is basically about a girl whose mother was a witch and her mother was hung. The town that she lives in is very suspicious of her, and at first she's not a witch, she has nothing to do with any of that. But then the woods start calling to her and she starts being very entranced by that. So this book is about that. It's set really close to where I live here in Boston. It is set in Salem, Mass, I think. So I love anything to do with Salem and witches. I even bought this book when I was in Salem visiting, and I'm really excited to read this one. I think it's gonna be a really spooky read, so it's perfect for the fall time, and I am stoked. If you read this one, let me know. I'm excited to hear people's thoughts. So far, they've all been positive for folks that have actually read the book. The next book I bought was mostly out of curiosity, and it is called Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. This is about a prince who I believe only has one good arm, and in this world, being strong physically is definitely what you want, especially when you're in line to be the king. So his father, the king, thinks he's basically a weakling, and because he can't be physically strong, he needs to really sharpen his mind, and apparently it's a very twisty and turny type of dark tale where there's a lot of betrayal. There's even a little quote from George R.R. Martin, who is the author of the Game of Thrones series, I believe, and so if he likes it, that's a really good sign because Game of Thrones is an amazing, amazing story. I think this one's probably going to be pretty intriguing. I can't tell if I'm going to like it or not, but I'm curious. I've heard good things about Joe Abercrombie as an author, especially his other fantasy stories, so I am intrigued. If you guys have read anything by Joe Abercrombie before, let me know. I think I have one of his other books, but I haven't actually gotten to it yet, so this will probably be my first foray into his writing. The next one I'm not going to talk a ton about because it is a sequel of the super popular series here on BookTube, and that is the Scythe series, and it's the second one in the series called Thunderhead. I have the first one of this series that I still haven't read yet, but I saw this one. It was on sale, and so I just got my hands on it because I figure if I like the first one, I'm gonna want to go straight to the sequel, and I hate having to wait. So I bought it so that I have it, and that's just how we roll on this channel. We buy the entire series and not just one book at a time. The next book seems like it's more of a middle grade and not totally a YA novel, but I saw this on a discount website and I was so intrigued by it. The cover looks really cool and the premise sounded really good that I had to get my hands on it, and also was on sale, so why not? It's called The Thief by Megan Allen Tuner, and this is about a boy who lands himself in prison because he's bragging about being an amazing thief. But then the king needs him to do some expert thieving in a foreign land and steal a prized possession over there. So he gets recruited to do this adventure, and I guess this is the story of that unfolding. This is won a prize, and it says it's a Newbery Honor book. I don't know if that's a prize or just an honorary mention, but it seems like it's pretty highly rated, and I'm interested to see what this is like. I thought this would be really interesting to read and maybe dive into some middle grade, because I haven't read middle grade since I was a kid. So this one seems really interesting, and it is in the fantasy genre, so I'm expecting a little bit of magic to hopefully be involved in this one as well. The next book I bought is also fiction, also in the genre of fantasy, and it is a classic, and it is Arabian Nights. This is a collector's edition, so it's got this nice velvety cover, it's got beautiful foiling, the spine is beautiful, and then the back is also beautiful. It kind of gives you a synopsis of what this is going to be about. So I'm looking forward to this. I don't know that I'm going to get to read it anytime soon, but sometimes I buy pretty books like this, especially if I know the story and I know that I already like the story, so I can have it on my shelf and kind of go to it if I need to, or if someone wants to take a look at it, they can, because it's pretty and I like that. I am definitely a sucker for a beautiful cover, so I am definitely not above buying a book if it has a beautiful cover, and this was definitely the case with Arabian Nights. So this next book is also a fiction book, but it's more of a dystopian novel, and dystopian type of books and stories are also among some of my favorite. I have loved dystopian themes. I think my favorite book of all time is still Fahrenheit 451, and that's definitely based in a dystopian world, and I found that just so mind-blowing when I first read it. So this one says that it pairs well with 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale, and there's a foreword from N.K. Jemisin, which is one of my favorite authors. This book is called Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, and she's also a Black author like N.K. Jemisin. I can't really describe the story, so I'm going to read the back to you guys. I don't know a ton about it, but I remember reading it, reading the recommendation, reading that it's dystopian and it's like Handmaid's Tale, and I was completely sold. So this is the synopsis. When global climate change and economic crises lead to social chaos in early 2020s, California becomes full of dangers, from pervasive water shortage to masses of vagabonds who will do anything to live to see another day. 15-year-old Lauren Olamina lives inside a gated community with her preacher father, family, and neighbors, sheltered from the surrounding anarchy. In a society where any vulnerability is a risk, she suffers from hyperempathy, a debilitating sensitivity to others' emotions. Precocious and clear-eyed, Lauren must make her voice heard in order to protect her loved ones from the imminent disasters her small community stubbornly ignores. But what begins as a fight for survival soon leads to something much more: the birth of a new faith and a startling vision of human destiny. So that sounds amazing, and I believe that this is a first in a series. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy or anything longer than that, but I saw it and I got really excited about it, and I'm always looking for different types of stories from authors that I haven't read from yet, and Octavia Butler's books I have not checked out yet, and especially if N.K. Jemisin is a fan, I'll probably love it too, because I'm a fan of N.K. Jemisin if you don't already know. So the next book is Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. This one I also saw online. It also intrigued me, and I've heard a lot about it on BookTube. It's definitely fiction fantasy. I don't know if it's YA, but it's definitely YA or adult, one of the two, and it seems almost like a fantastical mystery. The main character and her mother are beings that are called soul walkers, and they're able to enter into people's souls and I guess walk around, but in everyone's soul there's a black door, and the main character's mother has told her never to open that door, never to get near it, just don't open it, don't touch it, ignore it. And of course, our main character predictably, tests the waters. She puts her head up against the door, she hears her name, and I think thus the story unfolds. And I'm really excited. It seems really spooky. I feel like it's also really, really great for fall, which is probably why I was really drawn to it. And I think it'll be a good story. I have heard maybe one or two other booktubers or people who really love to read talk about this, and I believe they've said good things. I know in other TBR videos they've been really excited to read this book, and I'm really excited to read this book too, because I don't have too many mystery type of novels that I own, so we'll see. If you guys have read this book or anything similar to it, let me know. I am really intrigued, and I feel like this is going to be a 5-star read for me, to be honest. So this novel I actually got from another YouTuber that inspired me to check it out, and then I saw it at Barnes & Noble when I was browsing, and that YouTuber's name is Donna Tsundoku. I feel like most of you probably know her. My channel is much much smaller than her channel, but she always has the cutest videos and some really good recs. She does read fantasy just like I do, but she also goes beyond that, and this is one of those books that is fiction but is not strictly fantasy, and it's also not YA. It is called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now, the first line of this book completely got me, and I sent it to a good friend of mine who also loved the quote, and I'll read it to you guys because I think it's gonna hook you too. And it goes, "If I have learned anything in this long life of mine, it is this. In love, we find out who we want to be. In war, we find out who we are." And I read that line because when I'm at Barnes & Noble, I love to open to the first page of a book and read the first few lines and see if they hook me. And this one, first line, totally got me. And I have heard Donna talk about this book, and she even said that I think there was a few scenes that made her really emotional, that made her cry, and that she just really got attached to the book, or at least the characters in the book. So I'm really intrigued. This is about World War II and the women of World War II, so to speak, and that kind of atmosphere in this book. So this takes place in German-occupied France in World War II, and it does look at the women's perspective of World War II and how they lived their lives back in France. And I guess it gets really emotional and it gets really heartfelt. So I'm excited to read this one. It's definitely different than what I go for. I haven't read a periodic type of novel in a while, and especially an adult novel. This is pretty long too. I'd say it's almost 600 pages, and the pages are thin. It's a beautiful floppy paperback, so I love that. And I'm excited. I love a good novel that kind of just takes your heart and rips it apart in a million pieces. That can be really enjoyable if you are a, you know, sucker for pain like I am apparently when I read. So this is exciting. This is awesome. Check out Donna's channel if you don't know her, because she's also really awesome. So this next book is interesting because it reminds me of a friend of mine who I saw it on their nightstand, but they had like 5 copies of this book on their nightstand, and when I asked them why they had so many copies, they would not tell me. So hopefully I find out one day. But it is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz, who is a very famous author. So if you don't know about him, I'll be surprised. Although he doesn't write YA fantasy, this is still a fiction novel. And I saw it in the bookstore and it reminded me of my friend, so I was like, he must love this book because he has a million copies of it, but didn't tell me about it, so I picked it up. The best description that I found about it, or at least the one that seems the most succinct, is it's basically about this Dominican guy who's kind of a ghetto nerd, and that's exactly how it's described in the synopsis, so I'm not being bad. He's a ghetto nerd as described, and he's looking for the one thing he wants most, which is finding love, and apparently it's impossible because there's this curse that has been put on his family, so it becomes very difficult. And the description that I heard, I think it was on Goodreads, is that this is a story of how this man gets to his kiss, and it's like all the things that had to happen for him to get to that really notable and remarkable kiss. And I just think that's so cute and romantic, so I'm excited to read this. I heard that it's very bluntly written. It's from a young man's perspective, so there's also that kind of graphic that goes on there, but I've just so intrigued by this. I have heard about Junot Diaz. Obviously, this book won the Pulitzer Prize, which is also really cool. I'm excited to read this. The next book is not a fiction book. It is a non-fiction book, but it is basically about blue zones. Now, I watched Down to Earth with Zac Efron like the rest of the world did during quarantine on Netflix, and he explores different types of cultures, you know, sustainability and things like that. And he also went to Italy and explored one of the blue zones there. Now, Italy is not the only country that has blue zones. Japan and Greece are among some of the countries that do as well. But I did pick up Thrive, Finding Happiness the Blue Zones Way by Dan Buettner, who is pretty much like an expert on this topic. He has a lot of books out there about the blue zones, and this is just one that I picked up. It was also on sale, and I do have a few other blue zone books that I do want to get into, especially their diet and their way of life is really intriguing to me because they live really differently than we do here in North America. The next book I got was Freakonomics by Stephen D. Levitt and Stephen J. Dubner, and this is basically an economist's way of looking into data in different ways, and it is just apparently really genius. It's been a New York Times bestseller, but this one seems good. I feel like it's one of those books I'll read over a long period of time whenever I feel curious, and I just love books that give you like all this crazy information, so this should be interesting. The last book is one that I actually pre-ordered because it's someone that I really love listening to their podcasts and their YouTube videos, and that is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. So he is kind of like a motivational speaker, YouTuber, podcaster, really inspirational, really positive. He spent, I think, a few years in a monastery in India with monks and became a monk for a short amount of time before leaving and kind of rejoining the regular world with us regular folks. And as the title would, as you would guess from the title, it is about his life as a monk and how you can take the philosophies that the monks used where he was living in the monastery and apply them to your life in order to kind of live a better life and a better mindset. He's all about talking about a healthier mindset, about meditation, about just a better quality life, and I'm all about that these days. So I picked this up, I pre-ordered it, and it came. So this came out beginning of September, and I haven't opened it up yet, but this is one of those things that I do want to open up, that I'm always intrigued to read, and yeah, really excited about it. So those are all the books that I have hauled over the summer and early fall, and I know that's a lot. So this is probably gonna be a longer video than usual, but I really did feel like I picked out some good books and that they weren't like too repeated, and that I got to step out of my usual genre of books that I usually buy. So if you like this video, please click the like button down below and please subscribe to my channel. That really does help support me and help support this channel so that I can create more content for you guys. Thank you.